Welcome to the Access Basics Participation Project for the WV K-12 education problem. To get started, I've downloaded and extracted the provided data files, and I opened up our starter file, which is an ACCDB or Access Database file in Microsoft Access. In this project, we're basically just going to go and explore how Access stores data in tables. We'll take a look at queries that allow us to go and extract information from our database tables. And then we'll take a look at forms and reports, which give us ways to view the data that's stored. As we get started, there's a couple things that I want to mention. Probably the most important is that Microsoft Access only exists on Windows. There is no Mac version of Access, which means that if you're using a Mac, you're going to have to use something like Windows Virtual Desktop in order to go and complete these assignments. So keep that in mind. Either you'll need to use Windows Virtual Desktop or you're going to have to find a Windows computer. Other couple things with Access that you should know about. One of the big things that kind of confuses a lot of people with Access as they get started is that Access actually makes a lot of changes to your work sort of automatically as you go and edit the document. So we're going to go through and add what are called records, add information to the tables that are stored as a database. As soon as we go and click out of a record that we've added or changed, that change is automatically going to be saved to our database. It's not like with Excel where stuff doesn't get saved until you click the save button. In Access, there's a lot of things that you do that automatically are saved. So just be aware of that. If there's something that you're doing that you think you might mess stuff up with, you probably actually want to close Access, copy your file, and then reopen Access. One other thing to be aware of is that if you're using something like Dropbox especially, but also sometimes antivirus programs can also cause some problems, where if you try to do tasks like if you go to compact and repair database, which is something that we'll do, or if you go to the file and try to save as, it may tell you that the file is already in use. So you may need to go and temporarily stop syncing with Dropbox or OneDrive or whichever you're using, or go and temporarily pause your antivirus program if you do run into problems. It's fairly uncommon at this point for antivirus to cause issues, but cloud storage stuff like Dropbox will cause problems a lot of times. So just be aware of that. As you work with databases, you're normally going to have information that's across multiple tables. So you can see that we have actually 6 tables here in this database. The major benefit of using a database is that they give ways to be able to tie together different pieces of information that are stored in different places. Because of this, there's different places where you're going to have to potentially go to find the actual pieces of data that you're looking for. In the instructions for all of the CS 101 assignments, we have at the beginning where we're telling you what files you're going to be downloading as part of the data files. There's a listing of each of the tables and all of the fields, all the different pieces of data that are stored in those tables. Take some time as you're starting off with a new project to review those so that you know where different chunks of data are stored. That's going to make it easier as you go and work through the assignment. With that out of the way, I've downloaded and extracted the provided data files, and I've opened up the ACCDB database file inside of Access. This is going to be our starter file. Something that you might see when you first open up a file is that it has this security warning that some active content has been disabled. This is basically a feature in Access that will prohibit running queries that might change the data in your database, so update or delete type queries. If you don't have any of those, you generally don't have to worry about this, but it's pretty much always safe to just go ahead and click Enable Content, and then that bar will go away. If you do have a query that you're trying to run and it doesn't run for some reason, chances are you probably need to enable content before you go and do anything with it. To get started, we're going to modify some of the data that's stored in our database tables. Here in Access, you're always going to have this pane on the left that has the different objects that are stored as part of our database. So we have the tables which contain the underlying data, queries which allow us to view the pieces of data that we're interested in. We We can go and combine data from different tables by writing queries. And then we have forms and reports, which are sort of more polished ways of viewing and interacting with our data. To go and actually manipulate the data that's in our database, we're going to go to the table that we want, and we're going to open it in Datasheet view by double-clicking on it. We're going to start off with the school types table. So I'm going to double-click on school types. Datasheet view looks like this. It's kind of almost like an Excel spreadsheet. You've got a series of columns where each of these columns contains a particular field worth of data, basically related types of data. So this column here is school type abbreviation. This column here has school type name. And then the different rows are different records of data here. So the data going across the record is all going to be related. So the school type abbreviation ELS is related to the school type name elementary school. If there are relationships involving your tables, and that's something we'll take a look at here in a little bit, you can see a plus sign sometimes. And if you click on the plus sign, it'll show you the related data that goes along with that particular record. So in this case, there's a relationship between the school types table and the school statistics table. In the school statistics table, these are all the records that have this ELS as a school type abbreviation stored there. When we're looking at a table in Datasheet view, down at the bottom, we can see how many records we have. So right now, there are 8 records. And depending on which record I happen to be clicked into, it'll show which number record I'm actually in. What we're going to do is we're going to add 3 new records to this table. When we go to add a new record, there's sort of 2 ways we can do it. Down at the bottom here, to the right of where it says how many records we have, we can click on the button that's for a new blank record. It looks like a forward arrow with a star. We can also go and click on the very last row that just has the star. Both ways are going to get us to the same place, where we're going to be in this new record that has a star, and we can start to type in the values that we want here. So let's enter our first record. And the instructions tell us that the abbreviation is going to be PRE, and then the name is preschool. Now you can see that as I've started to type in the record here, first of all, the new record's actually gone down to another one. But for the record that I'm currently working on, it has this little pencil icon. That means that there are changes to this current record that have not been saved to the database yet. As soon as I go and click out of this record, it's going to go and change the database file itself. It'll go ahead and save my changes. So where I've got this PRE and preschool here, as soon as I go and click out, that pencil icon goes away. And even if I go back to that row, still no pencil icon because there aren't any unsaved changes. If I go and type a space or something like that, again I'm making a change, so the pencil icon comes back. If I'm in the middle of editing a record and I want to back out of what I'm doing, maybe I realize that I started to type something wrong, or sometimes, as we'll see here as we go and make some edits, we can make edits that are going to throw errors, that are going to cause problems, that cannot actually be saved. To go and back out of changes in that case, you want to press the escape key on your keyboard. When you press the escape key, it's going to revert back to whatever saved version of that record is in the database. You can see that the pencil icon went away. Let's go ahead and finish adding our other 2 records. We're going to have ALS, and this one is for alternative school. And then I'll tab down, and I'm going to enter TEC for technical center. When I'm done with my last record here, I'm just going to go and click out. I basically want to make sure that it actually goes and saves that change. Sometimes what people will do is that they'll forget to go and click out or get out of that last record that they're adding. Then they'll go and run queries and they don't get the right number of records back from the query. And that's because basically that record that they just typed in hasn't actually been saved yet. So just when you're done entering data, make sure you go and get out of that record so that your change is actually saved. So at this point here, I'm entered the records I want. I'm going to go ahead and close the school types table. Now it's asking me if I want to save changes to the layout. I resized this column a little bit. That's what the actual change that I saved is. It's not the fact that I've entered new data. I can tell it no. And if I go back in, let's go back to the original size, but it still has those new records that I went and added. And as we'll see a little bit later, the primary key is the school type abbreviation, so it's sorted on those. So that's why alternative school is now at the top, but then the preschool and technical center that we added, those are down at the bottom because alphabetically that's the order that they're in. Now let's go ahead over to the school statistics table. I'll double click to open it up in Datasheet view, and you can see that this table has a lot more columns of data in it. What we're looking to do is we're going to modify the grades that are served, which is this column here, for Wiley Ford Primary School. Now if we go and take a look at our data, there's nothing here that actually says Wiley Ford Primary School. The way we know we have the right school is by the school ID. The school ID is used as part of a relationship, and it's going to go and point to the schools table where there is an actual record that says Wiley Ford Primary School. So, for example here, let's go to the schools table. I know that Wiley Ford is in Mineral County, so I'm going to scroll down. And I can see here I have this ID 053208. And if I go back to school statistics and look at school ID 053208, that's going to give me the records for Wiley Ford. That code's also actually given in the instructions. You don't have to go hunt for it here. But let's go back to school statistics and actually look for those records for Wiley Ford. What I'm going to do is go to the school ID column, and you'll see that kind of like when we're working with tables in Excel, there's a drop-down option here that I can go and use to filter my data by. I can use these checkboxes if I want to hide certain values, but what I'm going to do is set a text filter. And even though these are numeric IDs, I want to keep the leading zeros because those are important to the code. So that's why this field's actually being treated as text and not a number. If it was a number, those leading zeros would go away. Anyhow, under text filters, I'm going to go to equals, and I'm going to enter the school ID that I want, 053208, and I'll click OK. It's filtered this data, and I can tell that it's filtered because it's saying filtered down here at the bottom, and it also has this little filter icon next to school ID, which tells me it's filtered on that column. So these are all the records that are for Wiley Ford. And we want to go and change the grade served. Right now it's PK, so pre-kindergarten to 2, and we're going to change it to 1 to 5. So I'm just going to go to the first record here because we're going to update all of them. And I'm going to type in the new value from the instructions. 01 space dash space 05. And I'm going to modify all of these records. The easy thing for me to do is to go and select all that text. And actually, as it turns out, if you go down to another record using the up and down arrows on your keyboard and you go back up, it'll automatically select all the text in that cell. I'm going to go and press Control-C to copy to my clipboard, or I can also use the copy button here on the home ribbon. And I'm just going to paste that value into the other records for the different years. So I can press the Control-V on my keyboard, or I can press the paste button here on the ribbon. So I'm just going to use the arrow key in my keyboard here since that's fastest. And I'm just doing Control-V and then a down arrow, Control-V, down arrow, and then I'm just going to come back up to save my change there. So now all these records have that updated grade served in them. If I want to get rid of the filter, I can go back to school ID and tell it to clear filter, or there's also this toggle filter button that will be available if we have a filter set, and we can click on that to toggle the filter off. The next change that we're going to do is we're going to update the school type for Pickens Elementary / High School that's in Randolph County. Now Pickens is a pretty remote community. It's about 45 minutes from the next closest set of schools at Mill Creek. So Pickens actually has a school that serves students in kindergarten through grade 12, and it only graduates about 3 or 4 students a year. Very small school, only about 50 students altogether. We're going to go and update its school classification here for the school type. We'll go and set a filter for its school ID so we can go and find it, and the school ID is given in the instructions. We'll go to school ID, we'll go text filters, and I'm going to set it equal to 075103 and click OK. And so you can see the records here. Actually, most of the years it's in the 30s. What we're going to do is we're going to change the school type. Right now, the school type is EMH. And if we go and look in school types, that is elementary/middle/high. We're supposed to change it to elementary school, which the abbreviation for that is ELS. So I'm going to actually go select ELS, and I'll copy it to the clipboard. And then I'm just going to go through each of these records using the arrow keys on my keyboard and just paste. And then we'll go through and change so that Pickens is listed as an elementary school for each of the years. The instructions now tell us that we're going to make a change for Belington Elementary in Barber County, and its school ID is 002201. So I'll go to the school ID, and I'm going to change my filter here, 002201. Right now, this is an elementary school, and we're told that we should enter a new code of AHS. So I've typed in AHS, and I'm going to go down so I can enter the next record, but I get an error here. It says that I cannot add or change a record because a related record is required in the table school types. It's not going to let me save this change. Notice I'm still in that same cell. If I try to go down again, I get that same error. The only thing I can really do at this point is hit the escape key and back out that change. Now, since it's back to ELS, I can go on down to one of those other cells, but I'm going to get that same error if I were to try to make that change there. What's going on here is that we have a relationship configured. And if we go and take a look at where this relationship is leading to in the school types table, notice there is no code AHS. That's why it's not going to let us set that new value. All of our relationships are configured on the Database Tools ribbon in the Relationships window. And I'm just going to reposition things so you can see a little bit better here. You can see we have a relationship between the school statistics table and the school types table. And the lines actually point directly to the fields involved. So the relationship is between school types, school abbreviation field, and school statistics, school abbreviation field. Basically, when you have a relationship, you need to have identical data on both sides for it to work. Now, a relationship is really kind of a convenience factor, especially when we're going to work with queries, to go through and basically tie together values from multiple tables based on the matching values in those fields. But there are some settings that we can place on relationships. To view those, we can actually just double click on one of these lines. So you can see this is the Edit Relationships window. And this is the same thing that will come up when you go to create a new relationship. It's telling us what our sort of parent table is here and the related table. So our parent table here is school types. This is the one that has where you're normally going to see that field be part of a key. So we have the school type abbreviation there. The related table is school statistics, and it's between school type abbreviation in both cases. Just doing the top part is going to set a relationship. Down here at the bottom, this is what's leading to that error message that we were getting because we set to enforce referential integrity. What referential integrity means is Access is not going to allow a situation where you have an orphaned record, where there's a record in our case school statistics that points to a school type that doesn't exist. If you're going to go and create a record in the related table, there needs to be a matching record in the parent table. And that's really important just so that you don't end up with pieces of data that are floating in your database that don't tie into anything else. When you're working with databases, it's extremely common to have referential integrity enabled. And that's basically a good data practice. So we're normally going to be using that with CS101 assignments, and if you work with Access or other databases out in the real world, you're normally going to see referential integrity enabled. There's two other options that go along with referential integrity: cascade updates and cascade deletes. What cascade updates does is it goes and says, if I try to change a field in my parent table, so in school types, it'll automatically update any related records in school statistics. Right now, as I have this configured where I am enforcing referential integrity, but I am not doing cascade updates, if I were to change a school type, say elementary schools, from ELS to ELM, it would block that change because it would lead to orphaned records, because then I would have some stuff here that said ELS and some stuff here that said ELM. If I turn on cascade updates, when I change this to ELM, it'll automatically go and update all these ones in school statistics to ELM as well. Cascade deletes is one that you'll see used a lot less than cascade updates. Cascade updates is generally pretty safe to use. Cascade deletes you gotta be careful with, because what it does is it will go and delete any records in the related table when you delete the original record in the parent table. So if I were to delete the elementary school record in the school types table, it would go and delete any elementary school records from the school statistics table. And that's often something that you aren't necessarily intending to do. Sometimes that can happen by accident. The problem is that once your data is lost, it's gone. It's not easy to recover it. So what you'll see a lot of times is people will just do referential integrity, or they'll do referential integrity with cascade updates. Cascade deletes is something that you often do not see checked, and that's just kind of for safety reasons. So with that aside here, let's go and cancel out of our dialog, just leave settings as they are, and I'm going to close the relationships window. And I'll tell it that I do want to save changes. In my case, it was basically just dragging the positioning of that box, but relationships is kind of something where you normally want to go and save your changes. One thing just to mention too, if you're working with stuff in relationships window, if you're trying to change things involving tables that you have open, you're going to have a problem. So before you go into relationships window to actually make changes or to go and create new relationships, make sure you've closed your tables first. At this point here, we weren't able to go and make those changes for Beelington Elementary, so we're just going to move on. We're going to close out of school statistics, and I'm going to tell it to save changes just where I've got my filter. If I have a filter saved and I reopen a table, it's not going to apply by default, but if I click this toggle filter button under the home ribbon, it'll come back. So if there's a kind of set of filter settings that you like, you can go ahead and save them and then just be able to toggle them on and off. I'm going to go ahead and close out of school statistics again. Back here in school types, we have some edits to make. The first thing that we want to do is get rid of the technical center record. So I'm clicked into the record, and there's two ways I can get rid of this record. The first thing is when I do have my cursor in this record, on the home ribbon under delete, I can go to delete record. Whenever I try to delete a record, it's going to confirm whether or not I'm really sure, because once you delete data, it's very difficult to get back. So it wants me to double check, am I really sure I want to delete these records? In this case, I'm going to tell it no, because I want to show you the other way. The other way you can delete records is to go and select them by clicking on the left-hand side here when your mouse is over this little sort of header bar, and it becomes a right-pointing arrow. That's going to select the entire record. And when I do that, I can just hit the delete key on my keyboard. It'll also go to delete that record. This time I'm going to tell it yes, because I do want that record to go away. I'm also going to try to delete the record for the elementary schools. So if you recall from a couple minutes ago when we were looking here, in the relationships window we had referential integrity set, but not cascade deletes. So when I go to delete this record, it's going to tell me that it cannot be deleted or changed. I didn't have cascade update set either, because the table school statistics includes related records. So this is what's going to happen if you have referential integrity but not cascade deletes when you try to delete a record. If I want to get rid of this record, what I'm going to have to do is go to school statistics, delete all the elementary school records there first, and save those changes, and then I can come back into school types and get rid of this record here. In this case, I don't really want to delete it. I just wanted to attempt, so I'll just click OK, and I am going to get out of school types. Now that we've taken a look at our tables through datasheet view, where we can see the information they contain, let's go and look at them in design view, where we can see how they're structured. I'm going to start off with the analysis questions table, and I'm going to right click on this and go to design view. What you'll see here is information about each of the columns that are in the table. We can flip back and forth between views using the button on the Table Tools Design ribbon, or also on the Home ribbon, or in this bottom right corner down here. So this is design view, this is datasheet view, back to design view. But you can see like where we have question number and response as our columns here, we have them listed here. The difference is each of our columns or fields, they each get one row when you're in design view. So we have our first field here, first column is called question number. When we go and name fields in Access, it's common to omit spaces in names. They tend to make things a little bit more complicated when you're writing queries. So what you normally do is just run the words together and do what's called camel case, like what I have here, where you capitalize the first letter of each of the words. So I have two fields, question number and response, and then in the second column, I have the data type for each of those fields, and that defines what type of information that field is going to store. You cannot store incompatible types of information in different fields. So if I have a field that is set to be a number type, I can't put text in it. Text, though, can store numbers. It just can't do math on them easily. For question number, we're only expecting a couple characters because we just need to identify what question we're dealing with. So it's going to be of type short text. Short text is going to be the most common field type that you'll use for anything involving text. It can store up to 255 characters. And if we wanted to have a little bit less, down here at the bottom when we're in the question number field, we can adjust the field size so that we can only store, say, maybe 3 or 5 characters instead of 255. Long text, which is what we have set for response, is used if you might need more than that 255 number. So long text can store huge numbers of characters here. The description field is kind of for your own information if you wanted to be able to describe what's in that field. Most of the time, this just gets omitted. You'll see that the question number field has an icon that looks like a key beside it here. That means that this field is the key for this table. And in fact, here on the Table Tools Design ribbon, you can see that the primary key button is in gray to show that it's been selected here. That means that question number is the key. The key is a field whose records can be used to uniquely identify any record inside of this table. There's only going to be, in this case, one record that'll have whatever question number we're dealing with. That means that question number can be used to uniquely identify each of the records. I'm not going to have 2 records that have question number 9A, for example. This is a pretty straightforward key situation here. We'll take a look at some more complex examples as we get into our other tables, but this is a really basic table. It has a really basic setup. Let's go ahead and close out of analysis questions. And we'll open up districts. I'm going to go into design view for this one as well. For districts, we have 2 fields again. These ones are both short text. We have the name of the district, and we have what region it's located in. District is set as the primary key here. Now, in this case, district is the only field that's going to be unique. There's only one Monongalia district in West Virginia. or one Kanawha district. But there can be multiple districts inside of each region, which means that the values for region are not unique. That field cannot be used for the key. District, though, there's only one of them that we're going to have records for each name, so district is a good key there. Things start to get a little bit more interesting in district statistics. Here we have what's called a composite key. So if you have a case where there's not one particular field or column that is going to be able to uniquely identify records, you can have multiple fields that collectively serve as a key. So we have in district statistics information for each district for each school year. That means that district is not going to be unique because there'll be a bunch of records for each district. And school year is not unique because there'll be a bunch of records for each school year. Population and dropout rate may be unique, but we can't guarantee that. It's possible that two districts across 2 years might have identical dropout rates or identical populations. So those ones are not necessarily going to be good keys. But we know we're only going to have one record for a given district in a given school year. So we can treat both of those fields together as what's called a composite key. That means that it's going to combine the district and the school year to go and serve as the key. So to set a composite key, we select both of the fields and then we go and click that primary key button. In our case here, district is short text because it's a name. Our school year, because it's something dash something, it's also short text. We can't treat that as a number. Population and dropout are not short text, though. They're both number types. And number is something that's a little bit complicated here. When you go and click in a number type field, you're going to have to look at what's set for the field properties down below. There's a couple values that are going to be important to check. The field size, and then potentially format and decimal places. The field size is going to control what type of number we're dealing with. If we're dealing with whole numbers, we're going to want integer or long integer. Basically, long integer can store larger numbers than integer can fit. If we're dealing with something that's going to have a decimal part to it, so we'll have a number like 3.14, we're going to use double as that type for it. Don't use decimal. Decimal has its own special purpose. You really aren't ever going to want to use decimal. Basically, if it's a whole number, use integer or long integer. If it's not, use double. This includes if you're dealing with percentages. So percentages, like our dropout rate, are going to have a field size of double, but we can format them as percentages using the format option. And there's a couple different format options available, sort of like there's different settings available in Format Cells dialog box in Excel. There's this percent option here that'll make things look like percentages, but if we want to put in commas for the thousands places, standard is there. There's different settings we can go ahead and apply. And then for each of these numbers, we can specify if we want to set the number of decimal places that they're going to show. With percentages, it'll normally default to 2 decimal places. For other values, it'll sort of look at how many decimal places appear to be important and then show that many, but you can go and set it to a particular number if you want to only specifically show that many decimal places. So that's what's going on in our district statistics table. Go ahead and close out of here. Let's take a look at schools. Here we have a couple fields. We have a school ID, we have a name, the county the school is located in, and a yes/no field that shows whether or not the school is closed. So yes/no is a different type of field, and basically it's just yes/no, true/false type values. The different types of data that we can use are from a drop-down list here. Now, in this case, we can't use school name as a primary key by itself because there are a couple cases where there is the same school name in multiple locations down at the state. We could go and use school name and county combined as a composite key, but the state has also assigned each school an identifier, the school ID. And the school ID, since there's just one field there involved in the key, it's better for us to use that one field as a primary key rather than go and have a two-field composite key. So you normally don't want to use composite keys if there is a primary key available. School statistics is the most complex table that's in this assignment here. And in school statistics, we have a special type of field that we're calling ID that is intentionally designed only to serve as a primary key. Its data type is auto number. What this means is that Access will automatically assign a value for this field for each new record. It just starts at the number 1 and then just increases it by 1 every time a new record is added. This is going to ensure that that auto number field, or ID, is always a unique value and always something that we can go ahead and use for our primary key. We have here some other fields. We have school ID, which is going to be related back to the schools table to keep track of what school we're looking at. We have school year, which is related to district statistics for what school year we're looking at. We could potentially go through and treat both of those as a composite key, but by using that auto number, we don't have to deal with the composite key. We can just have a single primary key. We have managing district, which is tied to the district name from district statistics, if we go and look at the relationships window. Then we also have other details specific to each school year. So we have what grades that school served in that school year, what type of school it was in that school year, and this is related to the school types table. We have some numbers where we have the enrollment, which is an integer, attendance rate, that's a percentage. It's a double type here. Remember, since we need to be able to store a decimal value to go along with the percentage, since it's really a number between 0 and 1. Our graduation is also a percentage. Number of students tested for the state proficiency tests. This one's an integer. And then the math proficiency and reading proficiency are both percentages here. Of the different types of data, we've seen short text, long text, number, auto number, yes, no. You're not normally going to use these last couple options for all object, hyperlink, attachment, or calculated. Those are sort of special use cases. Large number is designed for really big numbers, but some versions of Access don't support it. So for compatibility reasons, people tend to stick away from large number. Date time is if you need to store dates or times. Date time extended is a little bit fancier version of it, but again, it's also a newer version that some versions of Access might not support. Currency is if you want to stick specifically with money. So if you're going to work with something that is money, you could represent it as a number with a decimal part, but you can sometimes end up with some weird issues just because of how databases and computers internally store numbers. If you're working with money, you actually want to use the currency type. So those are the different types of data that we can store in our databases. And let's go take a look at our very last table, school types. And so this is another simple table. We just have school type abbreviation, which is short text, and school type name, which is short text. Now, in this case, either field could go through and serve as a primary key. They're both unique values here. But it's generally preferred to go with the shorter version of whatever it is for a key if you can. So since the abbreviation is shorter than the school type name, we're going to get a little bit better performance if we use the abbreviation for our key. The other thing that you want to keep in mind too, if you're working with an existing database, is that if this field appears in another table, because you're going to use it as part of a relationship, that's going to be a better choice. So, if I actually had school type name was the one that was being stored in school statistics, even though this is a longer version, I might actually want to use that as the key in that case. But those are sort of a little bit more complex situations. Right now, we're just trying to kind of explore what's going on with our tables. In this case here, I wasn't intending to change anything, so I'm going to tell it that I don't want to save changes to the layout. Okay, Now that we've seen the tables that actually store the underlying data, let's look at some queries that are written to go and extract that data. If we double click on a query, it's going to open up in datasheet view, and it's going to show us the results of running that query. So for example, attendance query here will go and list the managing district, what the name of the school was, what school year, the enrollment, and the attendance rate. So these are all different fields that are coming from different tables. And we can see exactly where this data is coming from if we go and switch to design view. So you can see here the data is coming from school types, school statistics, and schools. And I'm going to go ahead and resize this pane a little bit here. So we can see that we have managing district from the school statistics table, school name from schools, school year, enrollment, attendance rate, all from school statistics. And then we have also school type name, and this one's being used just to filter data. The check box here is not checked for where it says show, which means it's not going to show up in our results, but we do have a criteria set on it. So it's going to look at the schools and look at the school statistics, because that's where school type abbreviation is coming and then going through a relationship here. It's going to go through and find school types of intermediate school or middle school, and it's only going to show those records. So if a school is of any other type, it's not going to show up in our results. We're not doing any sorting right now, so the data is going to appear just in whatever order Access happens to have it internally stored in the database. If we want, and we'll see with some other queries here, we can go and sort the results so they appear in particular structure for our output. Let's go ahead and take a look at one last view, and that's SQL view. So when you're writing databases, what's really happening behind the scenes is that there's called structured query language, or SQL, that defines and tells the database, this is the information I want, this is where it's going to come from, here's how I want you to go and run some calculations on it, here's how I want you to go and sort it or filter it. So this is the underlying SQL language statement for this query. So we're going to go through and select these fields from this location, and we're having some relationships with these inner joins to some other tables, and then we're filtering with this where statement. When you go and do things in design view, basically you're just getting a graphical front end onto what's going here. For some assignments this semester, we'll give you a SQL statement that you'll come in and copy and paste to go and set up a query, rather than having you drag lines in design view. Let's go ahead and close out of our attendance query, and I don't want to save any changes. And we'll go open up our districts query. I'm going to double click so we can see the results. So this district query goes and lists each of our school districts, the 55 of them, and what region they're located in. If we go and view this one, all of our data actually comes from this one table, just the districts table. So we don't have any other tables shown here that we have relationships to. And it's just displaying two fields, the district field and the region field. We're sorting the results for the district field in ascending order. So that's what we get there. Dropout rates is going to go and show for the 2019-2020 school year for each of the districts what the name of the district was, what region it's located in, what the population was, and what the dropout rate was, as well as the school year. If we go to design view here, we can see that we have the two tables involved here. Districts, which is going to give us the district name and the region, and then we have district statistics where we can have the school year, the population, and the dropout rate. We're sorting by the district name in ascending order, and then we're going and filtering by the school year so we can only see those 2019-2020 records. If I was to go and get rid of this filter here under criteria, it would go and show every school year. So we'd have a lot more than 55 records showing up. And I don't want to save changes here. For high graduation rates, we're seeing for different high schools or schools that at least graduated students here, ones that had graduation rates that are above 90%. So we're viewing the managing district, what the name of the school was, what school year, what grades were served, and the graduation rate. So if we head over to design view, we're pulling data from two tables. School name comes from schools, and then we've basically got everything else from school statistics. So we can kind of see that down here. And then we have this criteria set on the graduation rate. And when you're working with a number type field, you can use greater than, less than type symbols like you would with an if statement in Excel. So here I'm telling you I want the graduation rate to be greater than 90%. But I'm going to go through and use the decimal representation of 90%. Just because that's how Access internally stores percentages. So 90% is equivalent to 0.9. So I'm telling it that I want values that are greater than 0.9. Proficiency query is what's called a totals or group by query. What that means is it's going to calculate some statistics. So if I go and run this query here, you can see that I've got the school ID, school name, what county it's in, and then I have average of math proficiency and average of reading proficiency. If I go ahead over to design view, you can see what we're getting here is for this math proficiency field from the school statistics table, under this total row that pops up when I click on the totals button, it's averaging all the values for that particular school. It's doing the same thing for reading proficiency. There's different statistics we can calculate. We can sum up numbers. We can go and count how many values there are. We can find the min, max, standard deviation. But these are something that really allows us to calculate statistics that are going to be helpful to us as we work with our data. Let's take a look at schools query here. You can see we have the managing district, name of the school, what grades it serves, and the school type name. This data is coming from three different tables: schools, school statistics, and schools types. And if we look here, there's a couple things going on that are a little bit interesting. We're sorting on two fields. We're sorting managing district and grade served, and they're both in ascending order. What happens when you sort on multiple fields in Access is it starts at the left and then works its way to the right. So first it's going to sort by district, and then it's going to sort within each district by the grade served. And keep in mind, if you're sorting on a text field, like what we are here, it's going to place numbers before letters. So that's why, even though pre-kindergarten kind of realistically comes before 5th grade, Access doesn't know that. It just sees letters. It sees the PK and it sees 05 here. So it goes and puts the 05 first because when you're sorting text fields, numbers come before letters. We're going through and placing criteria on the school type name. And we're telling it we don't want to display school types that are elementary school, and we don't want to display ones that are intermediate school. So this less than greater than symbol is not. So we're telling it, well, we want ones that are not elementary school and they are not intermediate school. So if we go and look at the listing here, the ones that are strictly elementary school and strictly intermediate school are gone. Now it's okay if the word appears in another one here, because this isn't the actual thing that we were telling we didn't want. Elementary/middle school is a different record, different value than what we told it we were wanting to filter out. So this one's okay. We're also telling it here on the school year column that we want values from 2019-2020, and we have the show box unchecked, which means it's going to use this field to go and filter the data, but it's not going to display it in the results. So that's what all is going on here. This one's a little bit more complicated query than the other ones we've seen. And that is our final query. Forms are designed to give you a way to edit data in your database without having to work through datasheet view. It can be a little bit more structured or user-friendlier way of doing things. We have two forms here, and as it turns out, they're actually kind of related. School data, I'll open up first. School data is a form with a subform. So the main form here is going to display the name of our school. And then by relying on the relationship that we have between our tables, it's able to go and pull from school statistics school data, and that's what appears here in this subform. So it's going through for this school, it's displaying all of the related records from the school statistics table for it. And the subform itself, I can also open up here, and the subform was just set up as a datasheet view. So that's kind of what it looks like when we go and view it here. But basically, it's just embedding it inside of this larger form here. Now with forms, form view is what you see as kind of the user-friendly edit view. This is basically if I wanted to make changes, I'd want to be in form view. Design view is a really low-level way to go and set up your forms. The way you're generally going to see things more if you need to make changes is in layout view, where I can just kind of go and click on fields if I want to change text or drag things around. Layout view is a little bit user-friendly way to go and do that. Let's go ahead and close out of here. And I don't want to save any changes. Our last type of object is the report. And we'll go ahead and open up high graduation rate schools here. Reports are essentially a nicely formatted way of viewing data that you have in your database. Reports can show the results from queries or the data that's in tables, but they're not designed to make changes. They're just allow you to see what's there right now. Normally you're going to either print out to paper a report or maybe make it a PDF or something like that. In this case here, this high graduation rate schools report is based on the high graduation rates query, and it's taking the data from that query and it's formatting it here a little bit. We're going through and grouping by the grade served, and then we have different columns of data within each grouping. So for the schools that serve grades 5 through 12, turns out there was only one that had high graduation rates, and that was Calhoun Middle/High School. And we've got the school name, school year, what district, and the graduation rate for each of those. There's a wizard that you can use when you're going and creating reports that allow you to control a lot about how they are organized. But you can also go and manually tweak things yourself. Right now we are on report view. Print preview will give you something that's going to represent exactly how it will look like when it's printed out. We'll go ahead and close out a print preview here. There is a design view, like with forms, and this one you're probably not going to use all that often. Most of the time you're going to make your changes in layout view. So if you want to go and give a nicer name or reposition things, you can do that all inside of layout view, and that tends to be the easiest place to go and make those sorts of changes. Go ahead and close out of here. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to run what's called compact and repair database. What happens a lot of times as you make changes to access databases is that the files get bigger and bigger, and you can end up with files that are many megabytes, which makes them hard to go and email to other people or to upload them to websites, like for turning them in. But it's just kind of bloat. It's not space that's really needed. Compact and repair database is on the database tools ribbon, and if you go and click it, it's basically going to go and shrink your file, so take up less disk space. It's not going to hurt anything. If you run compact and repair database, sometimes you may get a message that the file is already in use. What is happening most of the time with that is that you've got something like Dropbox or OneDrive or some other file syncing utility that is trying to sync that file, and it's preventing access from going and running compact and repair database. If you can pause that file syncing temporarily, you should be able to run compact and repair database. I have Dropbox myself. I tend to have to pause Dropbox before I can go and run it if I'm storing a database in a file that I'm sharing with my Dropbox. Sometimes you can also run into problems with antivirus utilities, but that's pretty uncommon at this point in time. At this point here, we are done. So what you'll want to do is go and close out of access, and then you can go and turn in this ACC/DB file as is to go ahead and get credit for this participation project.